I'm Ashley Miller, 32, a single mother of two beautiful children and a financial advisor who somehow managed to build a successful career despite life's curveballs. For years, I've helped my parents financially, even paying their mortgage since Dad's early retirement. Last month, I arrived at their 40th anniversary celebration with my kids, dressed in our finest, bearing gifts and genuine smiles. I never imagined that the family who raised me would treat us like unwelcome strangers at their own celebration. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for your children against your own family. Growing up in suburban Boston, my relationship with my parents, Robert and Barbara Miller, was what most would consider normal. Dad worked as an engineer at a local manufacturing company, while Mom taught third grade at the elementary school I attended. They weren't overly affectionate, but they provided stability and encouraged education above all else. My childhood home was modest but comfortable. Dad coached my soccer team until I was 12, and Mom never missed a school concert. They saved diligently for my college education, making it clear that academic achievement was non-negotiable in our household. I remember Mom's proud smile when I brought home straight A's, and Dad's awkward but sincere hugs after my high school graduation. Following their expectations, I attended Boston University on a partial scholarship, majoring in finance. College was where I met James Thompson, my charming economics classmate who would later become my husband and eventually my ex. We dated throughout college and married shortly after graduation when we were both 22. My parents approved of James. He came from a good family and had promising career prospects. I landed a position at a respected financial advisory firm while James joined an investment bank. We bought a small starter home in a decent neighborhood, and for a while, everything seemed to be going according to plan. My parents would visit monthly for Sunday dinners, with Mom bringing her famous apple pie and Dad discussing the stock market with James. When I became pregnant with Emma at 24, my parents were thrilled to become grandparents. James and I had good jobs, a stable marriage, and the timing seemed right. Noah followed 2 years later, completing our family. Those early years of parenthood were exhausting but beautiful. My parents helped occasionally with babysitting, though they were careful not to interfere, as Mom would say. The fairy tale cracked when the children were still young, Emma just 4 and Noah barely 2. James began working late, then weekends. I discovered text messages between him and his assistant. When confronted, instead of denying or apologizing, he simply said he wasn't cut out for family life and wanted out. Within 3 months, he had relocated to Chicago for a fresh start, with minimal contact with the children and consistently late child support payments. The divorce blindsided my parents almost as much as it did me. I could sense their disappointment, though they never said it directly. My mother would make comments like, "Maybe if you hadn't been so focused on your career," or "Marriage takes compromise, Ashley." Their support became tinged with judgment. Meanwhile, my younger sister Jennifer seemed to do everything right in their eyes. She married her college sweetheart Michael, a dentist, right after graduation. They bought a house in the same neighborhood as our parents. Jennifer became a part-time graphic designer, but primarily focused on being a homemaker. She had her 2 perfectly timed children, a boy and a girl, with a pristine house and homemade organic baby food. Sunday dinners at my parents' house became showcases of Jennifer's domestic achievements. Despite the challenges of single parenthood, I threw myself into my career. I worked extra hours after the children were asleep, took additional certifications, and gradually built a solid reputation in wealth management. By 30, I was promoted to senior financial advisor, managing portfolios for high-net-worth clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. I helped others secure their financial futures while my own felt perpetually precarious. The same year as my promotion, my father announced his early retirement at 62. He'd been experiencing back problems, and his company offered a retirement package that seemed reasonable. However, what they hadn't shared was their financial reality. Years of helping Jennifer and Michael with down payments, renovations, and private preschool for their children had depleted my parents' savings more than they admitted. During a family dinner shortly after Dad's retirement announcement, I noticed my mother looking unusually tense. After the meal, she asked to speak with me privately. In their bedroom, she revealed a past-due mortgage notice. They were 3 months behind, with the bank threatening foreclosure. Dad's pension wasn't enough to cover their expenses, and they'd been too embarrassed to tell anyone. Without hesitation, I offered to help. My promotion had come with a significant salary increase, and while money was still tight with 2 growing children, I couldn't bear the thought of my parents losing their home of 30 years. I arranged to take over their monthly mortgage payments of $1,800, a substantial commitment that meant postponing my own dreams of buying a house to replace our cramped apartment. My parents accepted my help with a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. Dad promised it would be temporary, just until they got back on their feet. But as months passed, it became clear this arrangement would be long-term. I never complained, viewing it as repayment for the stable childhood they'd provided. What stung was that this financial arrangement remained our secret. At family gatherings, my parents still lavished praise on Jennifer and Michael's lifestyle while making subtle digs about my unfortunate situation. Once, I overheard Dad telling his brother how Jennifer was looking into vacation properties, while in the next breath mentioning how I still hadn't found my footing after the divorce. Despite these undercurrents, I maintained a cordial relationship with my parents for the children's sake. Emma and Noah adored their grandparents, though visits became less frequent as my parents seemed to prefer spending time with Jennifer's children. When we did visit, I noticed Mom would often correct my parenting, criticizing everything from the snacks I packed to how I dressed the kids for weather. 3 years into paying their mortgage, I had established a comfortable routine. Every first of the month, I transferred the money directly to their mortgage account. Every Sunday, we attempted family dinner, though increasingly, these dinners happened at Jennifer's showcase home rather than our parents'. And every night, I tucked my children into bed in our 2-bedroom apartment, promising myself that someday I'd give them the stability and space they deserved. Then came the invitation to my parents' 40th anniversary celebration, an event that would unexpectedly change everything. The invitation arrived in an elegant cream envelope with gold embossing, clearly Jennifer's touch as the self-appointed family event coordinator. Inside was a formal card announcing Robert and Barbara Miller's 40th wedding anniversary celebration at the Westbrook Hotel, one of Boston's upscale venues. The party would feature a sit-down dinner, live music, and what Jennifer described as an intimate gathering of family and close friends. Despite the growing tension with my parents, I felt a genuine surge of happiness. 40 years of marriage was truly something to celebrate, especially in today's world. I immediately marked the date on my calendar and called my parents to congratulate them. "We're so looking forward to having everyone there," Mom said, though her tone suggested everyone might not include me and the kids. "Jennifer has put so much effort into planning this." "I wouldn't miss it," I assured her. "Emma and Noah will be so excited to dress up for a special occasion with their grandparents." There was a slight pause. "Oh, Ashley, we were thinking this might be an adults-only event. The hotel is quite formal, and the evening will run late." I swallowed my disappointment. "Of course, I understand. I'll arrange for a sitter." The next 3 weeks were a flurry of preparation. Despite my tight budget, I splurged on a navy blue cocktail dress that made me feel confident for the first time in years. I also purchased a meaningful gift, a custom photo album chronicling my parents' 40 years together. I'd secretly contacted family members for old photographs and spent hours organizing them chronologically, writing heartfelt captions that highlighted special moments. Finding a babysitter proved challenging. My usual sitter was unavailable, and the backup had just started a new job with weekend shifts. As the event drew closer, I grew increasingly anxious about childcare. Emma and Noah sensed my excitement about the party and asked daily if they could see pictures of my dress or what Grandma and Grandpa's celebration would be like. 2 days before the anniversary, I finally secured a recommended sitter through a colleague. Relief washed over me until my phone rang at 7 a.m. on the day of the event. "Ms. Miller, I'm so sorry." The sitter's congested voice came through. "I've come down with the flu. There's no way I can watch your children tonight."
Panic set in.
I called every parent friend I knew, checked care.com, and even considered asking my apartment building's superintendent if his teenage daughter might be available. No luck. By noon, I realized I had two options: miss my parents' anniversary or bring Emma and Noah with me. I called my mother, explaining the situation. Mom, I'm so sorry, but my sitter canceled last minute. I've tried everyone I know. Oh, Ashley, she sighed, the disappointment evident. Jennifer went to such lengths to create an elegant evening. I know this isn't ideal, I said, but the kids will be on their best behavior. I've talked to them about proper etiquette, and they're excited to see everyone. We won't stay late. After a long pause, she reluctantly agreed. I suppose it can't be helped. Just make sure they're dressed appropriately. I spent the afternoon preparing the children. 8-year-old Emma wore a purple dress with a cardigan, while 6-year-old Noah looked adorable in khakis and a button-down shirt with a clip-on tie. I reviewed behavior expectations, promised dessert if they followed the rules, and reminded them how special this occasion was for Grandma and Grandpa. Why do we have to be extra good tonight, Mommy? Emma asked as I fixed her hair. Because this is a very important day for your grandparents, I explained. 40 years of marriage is a big accomplishment. That's like forever, Noah exclaimed, struggling with his clip-on tie. It certainly is, I smiled, helping him straighten it. And someday, when you're all grown up, maybe you'll celebrate an anniversary like this too. We left our apartment at 5:30 p.m. for the 6 o'clock event, gift and card in hand. The children vibrated with excitement in the back seat of our aging Honda Civic. Emma clutched a handmade card she created, featuring a surprisingly good drawing of her grandparents holding hands. Noah had contributed by adding glitter, perhaps too much glitter, but the sentiment was heartfelt. As we drove, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Pride in my beautiful, well-behaved children. Anxiety about how they would be received. Hope that this evening might begin healing whatever rift had formed between my parents and me. And underneath it all, a tiny ember of resentment that I, the one paying their mortgage, had to justify bringing my children to a family celebration. We pulled into the Westbrook Hotel's circular driveway at 5:55 p.m. A valet approached, and I briefly considered using the service before remembering my budget constraints. I'll self-park, thank you, I told him, noting the flash of judgment as he glanced at my decade-old Honda. Finding a spot in the far corner of the parking lot, I helped the children out and straightened their outfits one last time. Remember, I said, kneeling to their level. Inside voices, please and thank you and no running. We know, Mom, Emma said with the slight eye roll she'd recently developed. Noah nodded solemnly. We'll make you proud, Mommy. His sincerity nearly broke my heart. I squeezed both their hands as we walked toward the entrance, the weight of the gift bag swinging from my wrist and my mother's hesitant permission echoing in my mind. Little did I know that crossing that hotel threshold would be the beginning of the end, or perhaps more accurately, the end of the beginning of my relationship with my parents as I had always known it. The Westbrook Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with tasteful decorations. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over round tables adorned with floral centerpieces, gold chargers, and champagne flutes. A string quartet played softly in the corner, and a table near the entrance displayed photos of my parents throughout their 40 years together. I spotted my parents immediately. Mom wore an elegant silver dress that complemented her gray-streaked hair, while Dad looked distinguished in a charcoal suit. They were greeting guests near a professionally designed photo backdrop featuring Robert and Barbara, 40 years of love, in flowing script. Emma tugged my hand. Can we go say hi to Grandma and Grandpa? Of course, sweetie, I smiled, guiding them forward. As we approached, my mother's expression shifted from a genuine smile to something more fixed when she saw us. Dad's eyebrows rose slightly, though he recovered more quickly. Ashley, Mom said, her voice tight. You made it. Happy anniversary, I replied, leaning in to kiss her cheek. I presented the gift bag. This is from all three of us. Dad accepted the bag with a nod. Thank you for coming. Emma stepped forward, proudly offering her handmade card. I drew you and Grandma holding hands. Mom took the card, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. How creative. Thank you, Emma. Noah, suddenly shy, half hid behind my legs but managed a quiet, happy anniversary. The children look nice, Dad commented, though his tone suggested surprise at this fact. Before the conversation could continue, Jennifer appeared with her husband Michael and their children, Madison and Tyler. Her emerald dress likely cost more than my entire month's salary, and Michael's suit was clearly tailored. Their children, though only a year older than mine, somehow seemed more polished, more contained. Mom, Dad, Jennifer exclaimed, embracing them both. The room looks incredible. The florist absolutely nailed the arrangements. She turned to me with an expression of barely concealed displeasure. Ashley, I thought this was adults only. My sitter canceled last minute, I explained. I tried everyone. Jennifer's mouth tightened. Well, we've arranged the seating very specifically. This throws off the entire table plan. I'm sure we can make adjustments, I said, maintaining my composure for the children's sake. I suppose they can sit at your table, she conceded reluctantly. But there are speeches planned and a champagne toast. It's really not appropriate for children. I felt Emma press closer to me, sensing the tension. We won't stay for the entire evening, I promised. Jennifer merely sighed before turning back to our parents. The photographer wants to take family portraits before dinner. We should do that now. I moved to join them, but Jennifer clarified. Just Mom, Dad, Michael, the kids, and me first. Then we'll do the extended family. The distinction was clear. My sister's family was the real family. The rest of us were extensions. I nodded and guided my children toward our assigned table, my cheeks burning with humiliation. Our table was positioned near the back of the room, furthest from the dance floor and head table. I recognized a few distant cousins and my father's former co-worker seated with us. They greeted us politely, though conversation quickly turned to topics that excluded me, neighborhood association matters and country club events I couldn't afford to participate in. Emma and Noah, to their credit, sat quietly, occasionally whispering questions to me. I provided them with the coloring books and crayons I'd tucked into my purse, earning a disapproving glance from Cousin Margaret across the table. Throughout the cocktail hour, I watched as my parents circulated among guests, embraced by friends and family. They stopped at every table except ours. Jennifer flitted about, clearly in her element as co-hostess, occasionally directing meaningful glances our way whenever my children made the slightest sound. Dinner was served, an elegant three-course meal with options clearly not designed with children in mind. Noah grimaced at his poached salmon, while Emma picked at her risotto. I quietly promised them pizza tomorrow if they tried a few bites. Midway through the main course, Noah reached for his water glass, but misjudged the distance. The glass tipped, sending water cascading across the tablecloth. It wasn't a disaster, just a small spill that barely reached the bread basket, but his face crumpled in mortification. "I'm sorry, Mommy," he whispered, eyes filling with tears. "It's okay, buddy," I assured him, quickly using my napkin to blot the spill. Accidents happen. Before I could fully address the situation, my mother appeared beside our table, her expression thunderous. "Ashley," she hissed, leaning down to speak directly into my ear. "This is exactly why we suggested an adults-only event." "Mom, it's just water," I replied, keeping my voice low. "The tablecloth isn't even that wet." "It's not just the water," she continued. "Your children have been fidgeting all evening. Madison and Tyler know how to behave at formal events." The comparison stung. They're being exceptionally well-behaved for their ages. Noah apologized immediately. My mother straightened, glancing around as if checking who might be witnessing this exchange. "Perhaps it would be best if you took them home. This environment clearly isn't suitable for them."
Ist sehr her, disbelieving.
"You want us to leave? Your own daughter and grandchildren?" "I'm thinking of everyone's comfort," she replied, her voice eerily calm. "Including yours." The children seemed tired. "They're fine," I insisted. "We haven't even had dessert yet." My father appeared then, placing a hand on my mother's shoulder. "Everything all right here?" Ashley's children are having difficulty with a formal setting, Mom explained, as if I weren't present. I suggested they might be more comfortable at home. Dad glanced at Noah's still watery eyes and Emma's confused expression. That's probably best, he agreed. This isn't really a children's event. I felt heat rising in my face as nearby guests pretended not to listen. You're asking us to leave your anniversary party because of a small water spill? It's not just the spill, Dad said, lowering his voice. This is an important night for us, Ashley. We have colleagues and friends here. It reflects poorly when what? I challenged, my voice still quiet but intense. When your divorced daughter and her fatherless children don't meet your standards of perfection? His expression hardened. That's uncalled for. We're simply suggesting what's best for everyone. Jennifer appeared, completing the intervention circle around our table. Is there a problem? She asked, though her tone suggested she knew exactly what was happening. We're fine, I said firmly. The children and I will stay for dessert, and then we'll head home as planned. My mother shook her head. I think it would be better if you left now, before the speeches begin. We don't want any disruptions. I looked from her to my father, searching for any sign of the parents who had raised me, who had once held my hand when I was Noah's age. I found nothing but social embarrassment and disappointment. With as much dignity as I could muster, I stood. Emma, Noah, we're going home. But why, Mommy? Emma asked, confusion written across her face. I'm being good. Yes, you are, sweetheart, I assured her, helping Noah from his chair. Both of you are being wonderful. Grandma and Grandpa just think it's past your bedtime. But it's only 7:30, Noah pointed out innocently. Jennifer smirked slightly. Children need their sleep. I gathered our belongings, acutely aware of the stares from nearby tables. As we prepared to leave, I turned to my parents one last time. Congratulations on 40 years. I hope it was worth it. The walk through the ballroom felt eternal. Emma clutched my hand while Noah, sensing something was deeply wrong, had gone completely silent. I nodded politely to those we passed, maintaining a facade of normalcy while my insides twisted with humiliation and rage. In the parking lot, my father caught up to us as I was unlocking the car. Ashley, don't be dramatic, he said, slightly out of breath. This isn't personal. It's about appropriate behavior and settings. Not personal? I repeated incredulously. You just kicked your only grandchildren out of a family celebration because of a water spill. It wasn't just that, he insisted. The constant whispering, the coloring at the table. They're children, I exclaimed, finally letting my voice rise now that we were outside. Well-behaved children who were excited to celebrate with their grandparents. Dad ran a hand through his thinning hair. Maybe if you had maintained a stable household, they would understand proper etiquette. Jennifer's children. Don't. I cut him off. Don't you dare compare them again. I'm just saying, choices have consequences, Ashley. Your decision to divorce. My decision? I laughed bitterly. James left us, Dad. He cheated and abandoned his family. That wasn't my choice. There are always two sides, he replied, and in that moment, I saw him clearly, not as the father who had coached my soccer team, but as a man more concerned with appearances than with his daughter's well-being. Get in the car, kids, I said, opening the back doors. Once they were buckled, I turned back to my father. I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years without complaint. I've swallowed every critical comment, every comparison to Jennifer's perfect life. But this, humiliating my children, this crosses a line. Something flickered in his eyes, perhaps the first recognition that he'd gone too far. But instead of apologizing, he simply said, "You're overreacting. Call your mother tomorrow when you've calmed down." I got into my car without another word. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of my parents in the rearview mirror, Dad returning to the hotel while Mom stood watching our departure, her expression unreadable in the distance. Mommy, why are you crying? Noah asked from the back seat. I hadn't even realized tears were streaming down my face. Wiping them away quickly, I forced a smile into my voice. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, buddy. Everything will be okay. But as we drove home in silence, the children eventually falling asleep in the back seat, I knew that nothing would be okay, not for a very long time. Our apartment felt especially small and quiet when we returned home. I went through the motions of our bedtime routine mechanically, helping the children change into pajamas, supervising teeth brushing, reading a story though my mind was elsewhere. Noah fell asleep quickly, emotionally exhausted by the evening's events, but Emma lingered awake, her 8-year-old perception picking up on more than I wished. "Mommy," she whispered as I tucked her unicorn comforter around her shoulders, "are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us?" The question pierced my heart. I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully.
No, suerte.
"They're not mad at you or Noah. You both behaved wonderfully tonight. Then why did they want us to leave?" Her blue eyes, so like mine, searched my face for the truth. I sighed softly. Sometimes adults have complicated feelings that have nothing to do with children. Grandma and Grandpa were probably stressed about their party. But they love us, right? The uncertainty in her voice made my throat tighten. "Of course they do," I assured her, hoping I wasn't lying. "Everyone has bad days sometimes, even grandparents." Emma seemed to consider this, then asked the question I had been dreading. "Do they love Madison and Tyler more than us?" I stroked her hair, buying time while I fought back tears. "Love isn't something that runs out, Emma. It's not like there's only so much to go around." It wasn't really an answer, and we both knew it. Emma eventually drifted off to sleep, but her question haunted me as I moved to the living room, collapsing onto our worn sofa. The fancy dress I'd been so excited to wear now felt like a costume from someone else's life. Sleep eluded me that night. I replayed the evening's events countless times. The look on my mother's face when we arrived, Jennifer's barely concealed disdain, my father's words in the parking lot. Had I misinterpreted? Overreacted? The rational part of me knew I hadn't, but decades of family dynamics had conditioned me to question myself. Around 3 a.m., I checked my phone for the first time since leaving the party. There were several missed calls and texts, but none from my parents or Jennifer. Instead, my father's sister, Aunt Patricia, had called twice, along with my cousin Melissa and 2 of my mother's oldest friends. A text from Melissa read simply, "That was horrible. Are you and the kids okay?" At least someone had noticed the injustice. I was composing a response when a text from my mother finally appeared. "You always were sensitive. We'll talk when you've calmed down."
No epaledi.
No acknowledgement of how they had treated their grandchildren. Just a dismissal of my feelings as oversensitivity, a familiar pattern that stretched back to my childhood. I decided not to respond immediately. Any reply I composed in my current state would only escalate the situation. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights and wondering how my relationship with my parents had deteriorated so completely. Morning arrived with no answers but the immediate needs of parenthood, breakfast to prepare, children to reassure. Emma was subdued, while Noah seemed to have bounced back, chattering about a video game he wanted to play. I maintained a cheerful facade for their sake, though the effort drained what little energy I had. "Can we visit Grandma and Grandpa today?" Noah asked innocently as he munched his cereal. "Not today, buddy," I replied. "They're probably tired after their big party. Will they come here?" Emma's question held that same note of uncertainty from the night before. "I don't think so, sweetie. How about we go to the park instead? The weather's supposed to be nice." The children agreed, though without their usual enthusiasm. Throughout the day, I caught Emma looking at me when she thought I wouldn't notice, her young face troubled. Noah, by contrast, threw himself into play with determined cheer, as if trying to compensate for the tension he sensed. By Sunday evening, I still hadn't heard from my father, and my mother had sent only one additional text. "Hope you had time to reflect on your behavior. We should discuss this before next Sunday's dinner." My behavior. As if I were the one who had publicly humiliated family members over a water spill. The message cemented my decision to maintain distance until I received a genuine apology. Monday morning brought the challenge of returning to normal routines. I dropped the children at school with extra hugs and reassurances, then headed to my office, where I struggled to focus on client portfolios and market analyses. My colleague Rachel noticed my distraction during our team meeting. "Ashley, are you okay?" she asked when we were alone. "You seem off today." The simple kindness in her question nearly undid me. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything: the mortgage payments, the anniversary party, the public dismissal of my children. Rachel listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly outraged. When I finished, she shook her head in disbelief. "Ashley, that's not normal. Or acceptable. You realize that, right?" "I know it was horrible," I admitted, "but they're still my parents. Parents who took your financial support for 3 years, then treated you and your kids like unwelcome strangers," she pointed out. "Would you accept that behavior from anyone else in your life?" Her question struck me with surprising force. Would I? If a friend had treated my children that way, would I be making excuses for them? The answer was unequivocally no. "You deserve better," Rachel continued. "And more importantly, your children deserve better. Emma and Noah need to see their mother standing up for herself and for them." She was right, of course. The humiliation I felt was nothing compared to the confusion my children were experiencing. Emma's questions haunted me. Do they love Madison and Tyler more than us? How many more incidents like this would it take before my children internalized the message that they were somehow less worthy of love and respect? That evening, I arrived home to find Emma had torn up a drawing she'd been working on for days, a family portrait that included her grandparents. "I made a mistake," she explained, avoiding my eyes. "I need to start over." "What was the mistake, sweetie?" I asked gently. She hesitated before answering in a small voice. "I don't think Grandma and Grandpa want to be in our family pictures anymore." Her words broke something in me, the final thread of justification I'd been clinging to. My children were being hurt by my parents' behavior, and I had been allowing it to happen in the name of family harmony. That night, after the children were asleep, I called Rachel, who had offered to be a sounding board. "I don't know what to do," I confessed. "Cut ties completely?
Confront them?
Pretend nothing happened? What would you advise a client to do?" she asked pragmatically. "If someone came to you with this exact situation, what would you tell them?" It was a brilliant reframing. As a financial advisor, I regularly helped clients make difficult decisions based on their best interests rather than emotional attachments. "I'd tell them to assess the relationship in terms of health and reciprocity," I said slowly, "to consider whether the arrangement was beneficial or harmful to all parties. And I'd advise them to establish clear boundaries with financial consequences if those boundaries were violated." Rachel's smile was audible over the phone. "Exactly. So, what boundaries do you need to set with your parents?" The question kept me awake that night, but with a different quality than my previous insomnia. This was productive contemplation rather than circular worry. By morning, I had clarity. I would no longer subsidize people who didn't respect me or my children, regardless of our blood connection. The realization was both terrifying and liberating. My parents had held emotional power over me my entire life, but I held financial power I had never exercised. It was time to balance the scales. Monday morning, exactly 1 week after the anniversary party disaster, I was reviewing client accounts when my phone pinged with a banking notification. Reminder: scheduled transfer to Miller Mortgage tomorrow. The timing seemed almost cosmic. The first of the month was approaching, which meant the automatic transfer of $1,800 to my parents' mortgage account was due to process in 24 hours. For 3 years, that transfer had happened without question or acknowledgement, my monthly contribution to family harmony. I stared at the notification, a strange calm settling over me. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, boundaries, and teaching my children what behavior was acceptable in relationships. If I continued financially supporting parents who could publicly humiliate their grandchildren, what message would that send to Emma and Noah? Before making any decisions, I needed to understand my legal obligations. During lunch, I called my friend Marcus, a contracts attorney whose children attended the same school as mine. "I've been paying my parents' mortgage for 3 years," I explained after outlining the situation. Is there any legal requirement for me to continue? Is your name on the mortgage? He asked.
No, it's in their names.
I just make the payments directly to their account. Any written agreement between you? Nothing formal. It was a verbal arrangement when my dad retired early. Marcus's response was clear. Then legally, you have no obligation to continue payments. Morally is another question, but legally, you're free to stop at any time. I thanked him and ended the call, the path forward crystallizing in my mind. That evening, after the children were in bed, I composed an email to both my parents. Dear Mom and Dad, I've spent the past week reflecting on what happened at your anniversary celebration. The public humiliation of my children over a small water spill and normal, well-behaved childlike behavior was deeply hurtful and concerning. For 3 years, I have faithfully paid your mortgage of $1,800 monthly without complaint. I did this out of love and respect for you both, despite the financial strain it placed on me as a single mother. I never mentioned these payments to anyone in the family, honoring your wish to keep this arrangement private. However, I cannot in good conscience continue financially supporting a household that does not show basic respect to me or my children. Effective immediately, I will be discontinuing the mortgage payments. If you wish to discuss resuming financial support in the future, I would need the following. 1. A sincere apology to Emma and Noah for how they were treated. 2. Acknowledgement of the double standard applied to my children versus Jennifer's. 3. Family counseling to address the ongoing patterns of favoritism and judgment. 4. A commitment to treating all your grandchildren with equal love and respect. I love you both and value family relationships, but not at the expense of my children's emotional well-being or my own self-respect. Ashley. My finger hovered over the send button for several minutes. This email would irrevocably change my relationship with my parents. It would likely trigger family drama beyond anything we'd experienced before. But it would also establish that my children and I deserved respect. I pressed send, then immediately logged into my banking app and canceled the automatic transfer scheduled for the next day. The finality of these actions left me breathless but certain. To minimize immediate fallout, I temporarily blocked my parents' numbers and Jennifer's. I needed space to maintain my resolve without being bombarded by guilt trips or accusations. I did, however, send a brief text to Aunt Patricia explaining that I would be taking some time away from my parents and why. She had always been the most reasonable family member, and I wanted at least one relative to understand my side. The next morning, I sat down with Emma and Noah before school. I need to tell you something important, I began. We're going to take a little break from seeing Grandma and Grandpa for a while. Because of the party? Emma asked perceptively. Partly, I acknowledged. Sometimes adults need time apart to figure things out, just like you and your friends sometimes need space when you disagree. Will we see them for Christmas? Noah's lower lip trembled slightly. The question hit hard. Christmas was still months away. I don't know yet, buddy. But I promise we'll have a wonderful holiday no matter what. Maybe we can start some new traditions of our own. Like what? Emma seemed cautiously interested. Well, maybe we could volunteer at the animal shelter on Christmas Eve, I suggested, remembering how they'd begged for a pet we couldn't have in our apartment. Or have a movie marathon with hot chocolate and all the toppings. This sparked a brainstorming session that left both children excited about new possibilities rather than dwelling on what might be lost. As I dropped them at school, I felt a weight lifting. I was actively creating new joy for my family rather than chasing approval we never fully received. That afternoon, I checked my email during a break between client meetings. As expected, there were multiple responses from my parents. My mother's was brief and cold. Ashley, I'm shocked by your immaturity and ingratitude. After everything we've done for you and those children, this is how you repay us? Your father is devastated. I hope you reconsider this foolish decision before irreparable damage is done. My father's was longer, but equally devoid of self-reflection. I'm extremely disappointed by your email and decision. We have supported you through every mistake and poor choice, including your failed marriage. One difficult evening at an adult event, and you respond with financial blackmail? The mortgage payment is due today. If it's not paid, we'll need to dip into our emergency fund. Is that really what you want? Call your mother when you've come to your senses. Neither message contained an apology or acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Neither expressed concern for how Emma and Noah were feeling after being ejected from the party. The focus remained entirely on my overreaction and their financial predicament. I closed my email without responding and returned to work, a strange calm settling over me. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my parents and stuck to it, despite the discomfort. The $1,800 that would have gone to their mortgage remained in my account, money that could eventually help secure a better home for my children. By Friday, the messages had escalated. Jennifer called my office 3 times before leaving a scathing voicemail. "You selfish, ungrateful bitch. Mom and Dad gave you everything, and now you're punishing them because they asked your unruly children to leave an adult event? They've had to borrow money to cover the mortgage you promised to pay. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. If anything happens to him, it's on your head." The old Ashley would have immediately called back, apologizing and arranging a transfer. The new Ashley, the one who had watched her daughter destroy a family drawing out of hurt, simply forwarded the voicemail to her personal email as documentation of harassment. Over the weekend, the flying monkeys arrived in full force. Distant relatives I barely spoke to suddenly felt entitled to text their opinions. Mom's sister Deborah called to check if I was having some kind of breakdown. Dad's golf buddy somehow got my email address to explain how heartbroken my father was. I maintained radio silence with everyone except Aunt Patricia, who surprised me with her support. "I've watched Barbara and Robert favor Jennifer for years," she admitted during our phone call. "The way they treated you and those beautiful children at the party was shameful. Stand your ground, Ashley. Sometimes family needs a wake-up call." By the 2-week mark, the barrage had somewhat subsided. My parents had apparently made alternative arrangements for their mortgage payment, as Jennifer gleefully informed me via text that they didn't need my charity after all. Through it all, I focused on my children and myself. I scheduled a consultation with a therapist to process my complicated feelings about my family. I arranged fun weekend activities for Emma and Noah to create new memories. At work, I accepted a challenging new project that could lead to the promotion I'd been working toward. The mortgage payment I didn't make went into a savings account labeled New Home, the first step toward independence from my cramped apartment. For the first time in years, I was investing in my own family's future rather than subsidizing my parents' lifestyle. Then, exactly 17 days after I sent the email, the doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon while the children were building a fort in the living room. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing in the hallway. The moment of reckoning had arrived sooner than I expected. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. Through the peephole, my parents looked smaller somehow. My father's shoulders slightly stooped, my mother clutching her purse with white knuckles. For a moment, I considered pretending we weren't home, but that would only delay the inevitable. "Emma, Noah," I called, keeping my voice steady, "can you please go play in your room for a bit? I need to talk to some grown-ups." "Is it Grandma and Grandpa?" Noah asked, his head popping up from behind the fort's blanket wall. The question confirmed they'd heard the doorbell and recognized the voices in the hallway. "Yes, it is. I need to speak with them privately first, okay?" Emma's expression clouded, but she took her brother's hand. "Come on, Noah. We can finish the fort in my room." Once they'd gone, I took a deep breath and opened the door, maintaining a calm exterior despite my racing heart.
Mom.
"Dad, this is unexpected." My father stepped forward immediately. "We need to talk, Ashley. May we come in?" I nodded, stepping aside to let them enter. My mother glanced around the apartment with that familiar look of barely concealed disapproval, noting the children's fort materials scattered across the living room, the modest furniture, the cramped space that housed 3 people. "Where are the children?" she asked, her tone suggesting she was owed their presence. "In their room. I'd like to speak with you first before involving them." My father didn't sit down. Instead, He stood in the center of the living room, his posture rigid with anger poorly disguised as parental authority. "This has gone on long enough, Ashley. Your mother and I received a notice from the bank yesterday. If we don't make a payment by Friday, they'll begin foreclosure proceedings." I was clear in my email about why I stopped the payments. I replied, maintaining eye contact. "Have you considered my conditions?" "Conditions?" My father's voice rose. "We are your parents, not business associates. You don't get to set conditions." My mother interjected, her voice taking on the wounded tone she'd perfected over decades. "We've given you everything, Ashley. Supported you through college, helped with the children when they were babies. One difficult evening, and you punish us financially? This isn't about one evening," I said quietly. "It's about years of judgment, comparison, and double standards. The anniversary party was simply the breaking point." "So dramatic," my mother sighed. "You've always been sensitive, ever since you were little." The dismissal of my feelings, so familiar it almost felt like a script, strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. "Emma destroyed a drawing of our family last week," I told them. "She tore it up because she didn't think you wanted to be in our pictures anymore." That's what your behavior is teaching my children, that they're somehow less worthy of your love and respect than Jennifer's kids. "That's ridiculous," my father scoffed. "We love all our grandchildren equally." "Your actions suggest otherwise," I countered. "And actions matter more than words, especially to children." My mother dabbed at her eyes, though I noticed no actual tears. "We drove all the way here to make peace, and you're attacking us." "Robert, I told you this was a mistake." From down the hallway came the sound of a door opening, and Emma appeared, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. "Why are you yelling at my mom?" she asked, her small voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Emma, please go back to your room," I said gently. "No one is yelling, sweetheart," my mother said, her tone instantly shifting to sugary sweetness. "Grandma and Grandpa just came to visit." Emma didn't move from the hallway. "You made my mom cry last week. And you made us leave the party when we were being good." The directness of a child, unfiltered by adult politeness, hung in the air. My father looked genuinely taken aback, while my mother's pleasant mask slipped momentarily. "Emma, please take Noah and go to your room," I repeated, more firmly this time. "I'll be there in a few minutes." She hesitated, but eventually retreated. Once I heard the bedroom door close, I turned back to my parents. "I think it's time for you to leave," I said quietly. "This isn't productive." "We're not leaving until we resolve this mortgage situation," my father insisted. "We can't afford the payments on our fixed income. You know that." "I laid out my terms clearly," I replied. A genuine apology to the children. Acknowledgement of the double standard. Family counseling. A commitment to equal treatment going forward. Counseling. My father practically spat the word. "We don't need some stranger telling us how to treat our family. We raised 2 daughters successfully without any of that nonsense." "Then I can't help you," I said simply. "I will not continue financially supporting a household that treats my children as lesser." My mother's expression hardened. "So that's it? After everything we've done for you, you'll let the bank take our home?" The guilt trip was so predictable I almost laughed. "You have options, Mom. You could downsize to something within your budget. Dad could take a part-time job. You could ask Jennifer for help. Her husband is a successful dentist after all." My father's face reddened. "We would never burden Jennifer like that. She has her own family to support." But burdening me, a single mother, was perfectly acceptable. The double standard was so blatant it almost took my breath away. My mother gathered her purse, signaling her retreat. "I don't recognize you anymore, Ashley. The daughter we raised would never be so callous." "The daughter you raised finally learned to value herself and her children," I corrected her. "And that's not callousness. It's healthy boundaries." My father made one last attempt. "If you don't resume the payments, don't expect to be welcome in our home again. Think carefully about what you're doing to this family." I opened the front door. "I have thought carefully, and I've decided that my children deserve better than conditional love based on perfect behavior.
So do I.
They left without saying goodbye to Emma and Noah, confirming everything I had said about their priorities. As the door closed behind them, I leaned against it, exhaling slowly to release the tension in my chest. Emma's bedroom door opened again, and both children peeked out cautiously. Did Grandma and Grandpa leave? Noah asked. Yes, buddy, they did. I knelt to their level. Come here, both of you. They ran into my arms, and I held them tightly, breathing in the scent of Noah's shampoo and the laundry detergent on Emma's t-shirt. I want you both to know something very important, I said, looking into their eyes. You are perfect exactly as you are. You deserve love and respect, always. And I will never let anyone make you feel otherwise, not even family. Emma studied my face. Are we still their grandchildren? The question broke my heart. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about things, but that doesn't change who we are to each other. Will we see them at Christmas? Noah persisted with his earlier concern. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. But I promise you, whatever happens, we'll be okay. We have each other, and that's what matters most. That evening, as I tucked them into bed, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and peace. The confrontation had gone exactly as expected, no acknowledgement, no apology, only attempts to guilt and manipulate. But for the first time, their tactics hadn't worked. The next morning, the consequences of my stand began manifesting. Jennifer had apparently been busy overnight, posting a thinly veiled account of the situation on Facebook. Heartbroken watching my elderly parents facing possible foreclosure because someone they supported for years has abandoned them in their time of need. Family should always come first. #ungrateful, #karma. By lunchtime, my phone was buzzing with notifications from mutual acquaintances and distant relatives. Some expressed concern, others judgment. A few bolder ones sent direct messages asking if I was really going to let my parents lose their home. I deleted the social media apps from my phone and focused on work. That afternoon, my supervisor Diane called me into her office. Ashley, I received a concerning phone call today, she began, her expression serious. A woman identifying herself as your sister accused you of financial mismanagement and unstable behavior. My stomach dropped. Jennifer called my workplace? Diane nodded. She suggested we should review your client accounts given your erratic decision-making. I want you to know I shut that down immediately, but I thought you should be aware. I'm so sorry, I began, mortified that my family drama had spilled into my professional life. Don't apologize, Diane interrupted. I've worked with you for 6 years. Your integrity and judgment are beyond question.
She paused.
That said, is everything okay? This sounds serious. Briefly, I explained the situation, the years of mortgage payments, the anniversary party incident, my decision to stop enabling their behavior. To my surprise, Diane didn't look shocked or judgmental. Instead, she nodded with understanding. I went through something similar with my brother years ago, she revealed. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with family. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Her support meant more than she could know. As we concluded our meeting, she added something unexpected. The Richardson account needs a new lead advisor. I was considering you before this happened, and I'm still considering you. The promotion would mean a significant pay increase, enough to perhaps help with that new home you've mentioned wanting for your kids. The opportunity, arriving precisely when I'd taken a stand for my family's well-being, felt like confirmation I was on the right path. 2 days later, I received a certified letter from my parents' bank. The mortgage had entered pre-foreclosure status due to missed payments. The formal documentation made the situation real in a way emails and arguments couldn't. My parents really would lose their home if something didn't change. That night, I couldn't sleep. Despite everything, the thought of my parents, in their 60s, facing housing insecurity troubled me deeply. I still love them, despite their flaws and the pain they'd caused. But resuming payments without addressing the underlying issues would solve nothing. After hours of contemplation, I called Marcus, my attorney friend, again. I need your professional help, I explained. I want to draft a legal agreement regarding financial support for my parents, with very specific conditions. 2 weeks later, I sat in Marcus's office with my parents across the table. The mood was somber, with none of the emotional manipulation of our previous encounter. The foreclosure notice had apparently stripped away the pretense. "I've invited you here because I'm willing to help with the mortgage again," I began, but only with clear, written terms that protect my children and myself. My father started to protest, but my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. The foreclosure notice had apparently made her more pragmatic. Marcus slid the agreement across the table. "This document outlines Ms. Miller's willingness to resume mortgage payments under specific conditions." My parents scanned the document, their expressions darkening as they read the terms. 1. Regular, scheduled visits with Emma and Noah in neutral locations, not at their home where Jennifer's family was often present. 2. Attendance at monthly family counseling sessions. 3. No disparaging comments about my parenting, career, or life choices. 4. Equal treatment of all grandchildren at family events. 5. Immediate cessation of payments if any terms were violated. "This is insulting," my father muttered. "You're treating us like children." "I'm treating you like adults who broke my trust," I corrected him. "Adults who have shown they need clear boundaries." My mother looked up from the document. "And if we don't sign?" "Then I wish you the best with your housing situation," I said calmly. "But I won't continue enabling behavior that hurts my children." The silence stretched between us, heavy with decades of family history and unspoken expectations. Finally, my mother picked up the pen. "Barbara, you can't be serious," my father protested. "I'm not losing our home over this, Robert," she replied tiredly. "Just sign the paper." One by one, we added our signatures to the document. There was no celebration, no reconciliation, merely a business transaction between estranged family members. As Marcus made copies for everyone, I felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty that I had finally put my children's well-being first. That evening, as I filed the agreement away in my home office, Emma appeared in the doorway. "Is everything okay, Mommy? You look sad." I smiled at my perceptive daughter. "Everything's getting better, sweetheart. Sometimes fixing things is a little sad at first." She considered this with the wisdom only children possess. "Like when you have to clean out a cut before it can heal?" "Exactly like that," I agreed, pulling her into a hug. "Sometimes things have to hurt a little more before they can start healing properly." As I held my daughter, I realized that was precisely what I had done, cleaned out a festering wound in our family dynamic. Whether it would heal properly remained to be seen, but at least now there was a chance for something healthier to grow. 6 months passed, bringing changes I could never have anticipated that tearful night after the anniversary party. Summer turned to fall, and fall gave way to winter's first snow, dusting our city in white. Through the changing seasons, our family dynamic evolved, painfully at times, but with unmistakable progress. The legal agreement proved more effective than I had dared hope. My parents, faced with the concrete reality of losing both their home and their relationship with their grandchildren, complied with its terms. The first counseling session had been awkward and stilted, with my father checking his watch repeatedly and my mother answering questions with minimal detail. But by the third session, genuine communication had begun to emerge. "I never realized how much our comments affected the children," my mother admitted during our fourth session. "When you said Emma tore up her drawing, that stayed with me." The counselor, Dr. Winters, had a gift for asking questions that bypassed defensiveness. "Barbara, Robert, can you recall times in your own childhoods when you felt compared to siblings or cousins?" The question unlocked something in my father. He spoke, haltingly at first, about growing up in his brother's shadow, the athletic, popular sibling who seemed to effortlessly gain their father's approval, while Robert worked twice as hard for half the recognition. "I would never want Noah to feel that way," he said, the connection between past and present visibly dawning on him. These revelations didn't immediately transform our relationship, but they created space for understanding. The rigid perfection my parents demanded began to make more sense when viewed through the lens of their own unhealed wounds. Our first supervised visit with the children took place at a neutral location, the city botanical gardens. I watched cautiously as Emma and Noah approached their grandparents, their body language hesitant. "We brought something for you," my mother said, presenting each child with a small gift bag. I tensed, ready to intervene if the gifts created uncomfortable comparisons. Instead, I was surprised to see thoughtfully chosen items that matched each child's interests: a geology kit for Emma, who had recently developed an obsession with rocks, and a dinosaur model kit for Noah. "Did Grandma tell you I like rocks now?" Emma asked me later, her expression confused but pleased. "I mentioned it during counseling," I explained, equally surprised that my mother had listened and remembered. The winter holidays approached, the first since our confrontation. Rather than the traditional Christmas Eve at my parents' home, we arranged a compromise: a Christmas lunch at a restaurant, followed by ice skating in the park. Jennifer and her family were invited but declined, creating an unexpectedly intimate gathering. Without the pressure of hosting or Jennifer's perfect family as comparison, my parents seemed more relaxed, more present with Emma and Noah. They listened to Noah's detailed explanation of dinosaur classifications and asked Emma thoughtful questions about her rock collection. When Noah spilled hot chocolate on his new sweater, my mother simply helped him clean up without a single critical comment, progress that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. As for Jennifer, our relationship remained strained but was slowly thawing. In January, she requested we meet for coffee without our parents or children present. "I still think you went too far with the legal agreement," she said bluntly, stirring her latte. "But I've noticed things in counseling, patterns I didn't see before." "What kinds of patterns?" I asked, cautiously optimistic about this rare moment of vulnerability from my perfect sister. Jennifer stared into her cup. "Mom and Dad do compare the kids, and they've always held you to a different standard than me." She looked up. I benefited from that, so I didn't question it. That wasn't fair. It wasn't a full apology, but it was acknowledgement, something I'd never expected from Jennifer. As we parted, she hesitated, then added, "Madison has been asking for a sleepover with Emma. If you're open to it, maybe we could arrange something." The cousins' relationship, previously restricted to formal family gatherings, began to develop independently. Emma and Madison discovered shared interests in science and art, while Noah and Tyler bonded over superhero movies. Watching them play together without the weight of parental judgment brought a joy I hadn't anticipated. Professionally, the Richardson account had indeed become mine, bringing the promised promotion and salary increase. By February, I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom townhouse in a good school district, not extravagant, but a significant upgrade from our apartment, with a small backyard and a bedroom for each child. The day we moved in, Emma and Noah ran from room to room, marveling at the space. "Is this really ours forever?" Noah asked, his concept of homeownership charmingly vague. "It's really ours," I confirmed, watching him claim his bedroom by arranging dinosaur figures on the windowsill. Emma approached more cautiously, as was her way. "Can I paint my room purple?" "We can paint it any color you like," I promised, relishing the freedom of ownership after years of rental restrictions. That evening, as I unpacked kitchen boxes, my phone rang with my mother's number. "We drove by the new place today," she said after I answered. "It looks lovely, Ashley. You've done well." The compliment, offered without qualification or comparison, felt foreign coming from her. "Thank you. The kids are thrilled to have their own rooms. Your father and I were wondering." She hesitated. "Would it be all right if we brought dinner next weekend?"
To help with the unpacking.
"Nothing fancy, just takeout." The offer, practical, respectful of boundaries, extended without assumption or guilt, represented exactly the kind of healthy interaction I'd been hoping for. "That would be nice," I replied. "The kids would love to show you their rooms." 6 months earlier, I couldn't have imagined such a conversation. The legal agreement had created structure, but the real change came from consistent boundaries and the gradual rebuilding of trust. My parents were learning, imperfectly and with occasional backsliding, that respect was a prerequisite for relationship. The family dinner in our new home wasn't perfect. My father made one comment about the modest size of the kitchen, and my mother couldn't resist straightening picture frames I'd deliberately placed at casual angles. But when Noah accidentally knocked over his water glass, soaking the new tablecloth, neither of them reacted with criticism or disapproval. My father simply helped clean up while my mother assured Noah that accidents happen to everyone. Later, after they'd left and the children were in bed, I sat on our small back patio, wrapped in a blanket against the early spring chill. The events of the past 6 months played through my mind like scenes from someone else's life. The confrontation, the legal agreement, the counseling sessions, the slow, painful reconstruction of relationships I'd once assumed were permanently damaged. Setting boundaries with my parents had been the hardest thing I'd ever done, harder even than weathering my divorce or rebuilding a life as a single mother. Family relationships carry the weight of history, the power to wound more deeply than any other connection. Standing firm against the tide of familial expectation and obligation had required strength I hadn't known I possessed. Yet that difficult stand had yielded unexpected gifts. My children were growing more confident, secure in the knowledge that they were valued for themselves, not for their perfect behavior. My relationship with my parents, though changed, held the potential for genuine connection rather than performance-based approval. And I had discovered my own worth, not as the family disappointment, the divorced daughter who couldn't match her sister's achievements, but as a woman of integrity who protected what mattered most. The mortgage payments continued, but they were no longer a one-sided obligation. They represented a mutual agreement between adults, with clear expectations and consequences. More importantly, they no longer came at the cost of my self-respect or my children's emotional well-being. As spring bloomed around our new home, I realized that the most valuable lesson wasn't about standing up to my parents, it was about breaking generational patterns. By refusing to accept conditional love and favoritism, I was teaching Emma and Noah what healthy relationships look like. They were learning that love shouldn't require perfection, that boundaries are acts of care, and that their worth isn't determined by comparison to others. That knowledge, that my children would carry these lessons into their own relationships someday, made every difficult conversation, every painful confrontation, worthwhile. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect you or your children? What was the hardest part about standing up for yourself? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics and finding your worth. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to establish clear boundaries. Thank you for watching, and I wish you strength and clarity in all your relationships.